And my name is Bahman Zohuri. I came from California yesterday, and thank you so much for Dr. Greer and company invite me to this meeting. And I'm here to learn some knowledge from rest of you guys. And that's how I start my statement and my talk, old saying, knowledge is power. And this is where I learned that knowledge from rest of you guys to see what's going on around me, although I'm continuously studying, keeping update with the technology, which I always think I'm behind of it. So saying that knowledge is power, we go to aspect of knowledge is power. I see it as a two-dimension space, one being knowledge, the other one being power that we're going to have. However, adding to this perspective of two dimensions, there are two other dimensions that you require to have that power in order to gain that knowledge, or knowledge to gain that power. And that is, for us to know the knowledge, we need known stuff as information. And with that information, we gain that knowledge. However, to have that information, what we need is data. Without data, you don't have any information. And without information, you don't have any knowledge. And without knowledge, you don't have the power you're looking for. So I looked at it as a four-dimensional space. If you're looking at Euclidean space or four-dimensional or Cartesian space, that's how I see that perspective. Anyway, one of the ideas that I'm going to present here, I am myself as a scientist, firm believer of UFO, but since I haven't seen it and I don't have that data in me, therefore I don't have that information to relay and have the knowledge and power to express what's all about. But I am a firm believer of it because I believe our galaxy is not just us. There got to be some other folks with better knowledge, better information, and better technology. Although we are on edge of learning more and more technology with artificial systems that is coming, why I call it, by the way, artificial systems, is there are two other components of it known as machine learning and deep learning, and without those two, subsystem AI wouldn't exist by itself. So the knowledge that I'm going to bring with me to you guys is known as a scalar wave. And I don't know how familiar some of you folks are with a scalar wave, but it's a new approach of physics, which is some sort of out of traditional understanding of physics, particularly this wave as a scalar wave is sort of a contradicting Maxwell equation. To me, is not contradicting. It's a complement to Maxwell equation. So out of 26 Maxwell equations that exist, he reduced it to total of 4, and one of them happened to be Ampere-Maxwell equations that scalar wave can be driven from it. And there was a book that I wrote, and it was there. And you saw it at the first slide. Describing all the waves in different perspectives and understand any differences between each is presented in this PowerPoint presentation. And I am not going to go through all reading stuff about it, but some of the waves we are known, like a wind, like droplet into the water, creating wave. Those are typical scenario that we're facing each day and we're observing. Next slide, please. And radio wave, X-rays, and other kind of a wave that we are familiar with, such as microwave, infrared, they're all well known and we know it. None of these things are in a characteristic of a scalar wave, but is very similar behavior as it comes to electromagnetic wave and understanding of wave from both Maxwell and electromagnetic field, and also electrodynamic that we are facing, describing these waves. Next, please. In vector versus a scalar, that most of the waves are in a vector form, a scalar, as it says, quantity or phenomena that exhibits magnitude only, typically a numerical value. And based on no specific direction when it comes to mass, volume, speed, time, and energy density, or example of scalars that is different than other waves that we are familiar with. Next, please. This is a typical wave that characteristic of it shows, and we are all familiar with it, and easily can be solved by simple partial differential equation, not getting too fancy in mathematics, but in general, that's how you can solve it. There is an amplitude, there is a crest, and there is a motion to it that can describe a wave. Next, please. And mechanical wave, as you can see, has some sort of a longitudinal wave, as well as also transverse wave that we can easily plot it and see it on any oscilloscope machine. Next, please. Example of mechanical waves are similarly, you can see depicted, and you can see there are really nothing extraordinary information about them. We all are familiar with it. Next, please. Sound wave that is broken here by F18 and has a nice sound barrier broken by this fighter. That's a good example of, again, longitudinal and typical sound barrier that we're breaking during supersonic speed that we can break with airplane. Electromagnetic wave that is also presentation of present Ampere-Maxwell equation that we are familiar with, versus how we can solve this equation in order to demonstrate a scalar wave and give a meaning to it. Next, please. These are typical boundary of the waves from radio all the way to gamma rays, that each one have their own spectrum that you can see and plotted here and depicted as well going forward. Next, please. Again, more aspect of it. Next, please. Matter waves that we are familiar and also developed by folks like Einstein and shows what kind of a wave you are looking at, hot, cooling, laser beam, and so forth, so on. Other scientists that described it, and we can see typical aspect of it here as well. Next, please. Now it comes to a scalar wave. The father of the scalar wave is nobody except Nikola Tesla with his patents and some of the ideas he had. However, from aspect of presenting this beyond just example that you typically see it in his depiction in his laboratory, he didn't have the right equation to present his scalar wave, but he had enough experimental demonstration that showed us a scalar wave is different than Hertzian wave that we are aware of it, like those other waves that I showed you at the beginning of the slides. His wave is energy wave, and that's where a scalar wave comes from. And some of the comments and claim that this guy did, brilliant scientist, and we also claiming is a complementary to Maxwell equation and presents what a scalar wave is all about, where the difference between Hertzian and a scalar wave come to play. Next, please. This is a typical pattern that he showed and demonstrate that. And some of these things you find today in a lot of places like YouTube with a lot of ideas people present. And of course, there are a lot of hocus pocus behind their ideas that doesn't mean anything, but they demonstrate they have a scalar. But this is a typical patent of his that he presented a scalar wave and showed it to the world. And one of the claims he had, pay attention to that, he said, it's a wave that can travel 1.5 times the speed of light, not the speed of sound, okay? That's where the problem starts happening. People objecting. They're saying theory of relativity does not allow go faster than the speed of light. Yeah, possibly. But that's our existing knowledge. But is there any other knowledge that we have to know and information that we have to gather? And what can say about it? And recently, about a month ago, I heard Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory measured such a wave at 1.3 times the speed of light, which was very interesting to me. And of course, one Russian scientist named Trongov showed this wave from the bottom of the reactor, light body reactor, and he measured it at 1.3. And also I came across of another scientist. When I started writing that book of mine about the scalar wave, which is, by the way, the only book exists so far that I know, I claim this also goes beyond speed of light. He demonstrated that at Los Alamos, and he presented in University of New Mexico about 4 years ago, that I was lucky to listen to his presentation at the source of the beam he created from his antenna that he built at Los Alamos. He measured it at 1.3. So we both agreed that we are on the same path. So he demonstrated theory, experimentally, and I demonstrated mathematically and from the theory perspective. Next, please. This is one phenomenon that the scalar wave can be used in a weaponry system, and we can utilize it in a very nasty sort of a weapon system, and it's called Big Eye or interferometry, which is technology that two scalar beam can be used as a defense mechanism as well as also as a very aggressive weaponry system in a directed type of energy weapon, if you're interested in that arena. However, a scalar wave also has been demonstrated and can be shown within certain frequency can penetrate going through water and communicate underwater that allows our submarine warfare group people not to surface from the depth to certain level in order to stick their antenna to communicate with their headquarters, rather communicate while they are underwater. And also similar folks or other folks demonstrated at certain frequency below 8 gigahertz, this wave can be used as a technique for treating Alzheimer or depression. I haven't done that because I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not licensed to do some testing, but theory at least logically shows there exists such a thing that we can do it, okay? Because these days a lot of ECTs are used treating depression, which is very invasive approach versus using a scalar wave at that frequency below 8 gigahertz is a very non-invasive solution approaching something known as transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, that exists, and a lot of folks are talking about it. And of course, it's not approved by FDA, but I can see at Stanford a lot of folks showing that demonstration and treating their patient rather than using ECT, they are using TMS, which is a good approach if we can utilize a scalar wave. Because one of the beauty about a scalar wave is nothing stops traveling of this wave, not even Faraday cage, because we know Hertzian wave can be stopped by Faraday cage and not by a scalar wave. And we can talk about it and some of opinion I have personally based on observation we have seen. Next page, please. So in a simple form, a scalar wave is a wave that is not presented by any coordination system and not related to direction and dimension. So it's not traveling really just in Euclidean space, propagates through the time dimension, such as Minkowski space, which is in simple terms curvature space that we're traveling. And that possibly also justifies how the UFOs or extraterrestrial objects are going to us from galaxies far away that we measured by distance of light, 10,000 light distance. That's how they travel and coming, not in a straightforward direction, but in some sort of a curvature or a Minkowski space to come and visit us. That's one justification we can justify that traveling, because as we know, traveling to the space, there is a lot of objections or objectives to it that we have to really overcome and be able to measure to pass certain resistance, such as air resistance and frictions and things like that. And this can be defined and driven by something known as quantum electrodynamic versus classical electrodynamic. So next, please. Can you go to next page, please? Is it? Okay. A scalar wave, as I said, is a store energy information outside of our three-dimensional space because they propagate through time dimension, but their energy can be released in our three-dimensional space. The scalar waves are nonlinear or non-Hertzian waves. As I call it, is energy waves, and that have the ability to carry information. There has been some speculation that the scalar waves can also occur naturally in nature, like in our DNA, although there are some claims by some German scientists that is a good treatment of some diseases, which is not really proven. So some of them, I look at it with some sort of a doubt in it, and I don't go beyond just that they have measured DNA might be generated through DNA, a scalar wave through DNA situation. To be verified, I personally don't have any experience. Next one, please. Characteristics of a scalar wave, they form a non-local potential energy. Scalar waves also carry information, and they have fractal structure. Such waves do not decay over time and distance because they're longitudinal. And scalar waves are store energy and information in a dimension out of our three-dimensional space. That might be one of the reasons propulsion system of some of these UFOs might be depending on such a technology. That's just an idea. I personally don't have any experience. I haven't done any study in that area, but that is the only justification I can justify from physics perspective and science perspective. That's how they fly. Because the clips I have seen in some cases on CNN or other news, the way those extraterrestrial objects are flying, definitely violating all kinds of a conservation of law that we are familiar with, such as conservation of mass, momentum, and particularly energy. The way they move, their move is definitely out of our knowledge of understanding of classical mechanical engineering or quantum mechanical engineering. So that's a possibility that they fly like that. Energy of a scalar wave can be released by closing the circuit in our 3D space and allows us to travel in Minkowski or curvature space to shorten the distances between 2 points. Next, please. Travel faster than the speed of light. That is definitely not known. At least 2 national laboratories prove that. Theory of my calculation based on what you see in my book that you saw at the beginning of the slide. If you read through it with 2,524 equation in it, I prove that case is doable. And cause the molecular structure of water become coherently reordered due to the penetration it has. And as I claimed in this case, scalar wave cannot be stopped by anything, even Faraday cage, that most waves, millimeter wave, microwave, and all kinds of a spectrum of Hertzian wave that can be stopped. A scalar wave can penetrate through through Faraday cage. And our involvement, one of the characteristics is that also involved in the formation of process in nature. That's why also we can penetrate through the salt water and be able to communicate under certain pressure and depth of water in the ocean. And that's why for warfare communities such as submarines, such as the special operation folks that are going underwater, they can communicate using specific antenna design for their application, do the communication and penetrate through salt water. Next, please. This is a typical scenario of Minkowski space that we can imagine and show it through quantum electrodynamics and be able to draw it and going from past light cone to the future and be able to travel in this space and cover the 2 distances at a shorter time. Next, please. Recent experiments on a scalar wave around 2001 experiments were conducted by Professor Konstantin Christian Meyer. He's a German guy who also claimed the DNA aspect of it. That's where the problem comes in and takes credibility away from him. But when you're reading his book, you have to give him the credit that he discovered experimentally by presenting it this through his instrumentation that he built. He has cases that easily can be purchased, and I bought one of them about 5 years ago while I was adjunct professor of, at the University of New Mexico, and be able to bought one of them and really presented that you could read it on oscilloscope, such a wave. Next one, please. That is a typical instrumentation he built. I'm not advocating this instrumentation. I just bought it for purpose of what he's claiming based on those two coils that original patent of Tesla had it. And sure enough, it shows something, but needed more funding, which I got a huge resistance from university not to do these sort of things in their laboratories or laboratories that I had. So it is what it is. There's nothing that you can do. Unless folks believe in it, then they get behind you to support you, just fighting up the hill battle because you're saying, hey, it's a violation of theory of Einstein going faster than the speed of light. When Einstein expressed his theory, he was going against Newton's laws, okay? But yet we accepted it. So there might be other reason behind it. That's the book I'm talking about. I'm not advertising my book because this book is not available openly in the market. Simply Springer, who published it and sold a lot of it, pulled it out of the market with no reason. So, but there's still some copy of it are out there. And if you can't find it, reach out to me. I'll send you the PDF of it. I don't care about my copyright or their copyright. It's mine. I wrote it. I'll give it to whoever wants it. Yet they are selling it amazingly. But they say we pulled it out of the market. Okay, fine. Next one, please. Next slide. Okay. A scalar wave application. As I mentioned, a scalar wave, from my perspective, has three applications that I can put my hand on it and back it up with my equation and science of physics and mathematics. If anybody has any challenge, prove it I'm wrong, because from my perspective, 2 + 2, if it is equal 4, then this equation shows that fact, that you go and derive some form of a equation that is different than Hertzian characteristic of equation and travels at 1/r rather than 1/r squared. If you look at differential equation of, or partial differential equation of Hertzian wave, it is relationship with the distance is r squared at the bottom, the inverse of r squared. In a scalar wave is 1/r. Simply by taking simple Maxwell-Ampere equation and do simple vector analysis on it, again, not going fancy, but prove my case, you can see that a scalar wave as a secondary complementary solution to Maxwell equation. So I'm not challenging Maxwell per se, that he's wrong. I'm just saying he possibly knew it, but ignored it to make his equation very simple, or he didn't know about it, or he didn't know how to derive it, which I doubted. I mean, Maxwell equations are very well-known equations, and they are very famous, and everybody uses it from day to day or life. So I'm not denying that as a physicist myself, but as a complementary to his equation, a scalar wave exists, and you can easily prove it through the mathematics and science of physics behind it. The three applications that I see in a scalar wave, as I mentioned, if it is below certain frequencies, such as 8 gigahertz, easily can be used for treatment of any depression, Alzheimer, and so forth, so on. And easily can be used for PTSD, particularly in case of all these remotely piloted personnel that Air Force has. And they losing them through the depression because they see attack of their events very quickly at the last minute that hits the target. The other one is underwater communication. If this scalar wave is below 60 gigahertz can be used as a communication means, and above it can be used as a weapon, and easily can be used. And one of the things that we might be running out of time, so I'm going to cut through some of these slides quickly. The events of Cuban folks or Department of Energy folks or diplomat that got sick is based on a scalar wave. Although everybody else is claiming that is a microwave cannot penetrate through walls, concretes, and so forth, so on. Has to be a scalar wave that goes through Faraday cage even. So even you want to send a microwave or millimeter wave, you need a huge antenna and infrastructure to propagate this wave. However, a scalar wave does not require such a thing. A simple antenna built on a scalar wave technology that the scientist John showed at Los Alamos can be miniaturized very easily and be used for that purpose, okay? And also a scalar wave can travel beyond any technology that laser offers when it comes to high energy weaponry system or high energy directed weapons. The scalar wave has a different characteristic that can go through particularly interferometer technology and attack. And it also is a good countermeasure against hypervelocity objects coming at us, because for us to travel at 15 times the speed of sound, you need to break through atmosphere molecules. And for that, you need to have a weak plasma in front of objects to be able to travel and overcome the friction that you have in front of you. And a scalar wave can interface these things and attack them, and utilizing AI systems be able to pinpoint the target coming at you through this interferometry technology and be able to attack them, particularly if they're coming at cruise mode rather than ballistic or hyper type approach that they have. So a scalar wave has a lot of application, as I said, and that's the third application, and something our defense companies got to look at it and be able to defend against hypervelocity objects coming in. And a scalar wave also penetrates through any weak plasma that these objects creating in front of themselves to travel within air and not having any friction and be able to reach that speed. However, if you send a high power antenna to detect them, first of all, by the time you detect them, it's no longer there, it's gone. Secondly, they get absorbed by that weak plasma or debye shield or plasma shield that they have in front of them, and help them to even enhance their speed faster. Yet a scalar wave bounces back and brings new information to you and says what's going on with that object, and you can tackle it. We can go quickly through these slides so they can see it. This is a typical scenario that is been shown by Tesla, and if you look at the shape that is his hand drawing versus the next slide that can be used at a sort of a strategic defense initiative scenario, you can see the similarity between this and the next slide, please, if you go. Next slide. One more, please. One more. I'm going to go through this and let you guys. One more, please. This one is a scenario that suggests a scalar wave can be used for treating PTSD and depression. That's the sort of a configuration I came up with, and I even applied for a patent to obtain that instrument sitting behind this lady in the picture that can be used dealing with transcranial magnetic stimulation to treat depression. Next slide, please. One more. More. Okay, these are typical hypervelocity curvature that we can see, that the propulsion system we have in our arsenal allows us to go to scramjet and be able to deal with some of those black programs when it comes to airplanes that our previous speaker talked about. But this is as far as we can go, a scramjet. That doesn't justify how this extraterrestrial objects are flying to our environment. Because if you measure into distance with the speed of light, then none of this propulsion system justifies their traveling. They got to have other technology to travel and come to us. And definitely when it comes to our atmosphere, how they break that scenario of friction and not generating enough heat to melt them down, and what kind of a technology or methodology they are using from nanotechnology perspective to resist the heat that we're generating. Our technology doesn't really justify their move either. Next slide, please. This is a typical hypersonic velocity that you can see. And as you can see, the heat generating in front of them can be overcome by having this weak plasma around them and be able to travel at the velocity of 10 or 15 times speed of sound and 15 Mach or 5 Mach or whatever Mach they're traveling at. And next one, please. These are typical scenarios of that. I'll leave these details on the internet that connects to this conference, and you do your own study. I just put it in PowerPoint presentation. Next one, please. Next one. Next one. And these are all physics behind all those hypersonic velocity stuff that if defense folks within this group are involved, they have interest in it. They can look at it. That's all my observation. I don't know what's out there. I don't have access to them, so I don't know. Next one, please. And next one. This is, again, another scenario of interferometer technology that can be used and go against these measures coming at hypervelocity with the countermeasures such as that can be discussed in more detail. Next one, please. Next. And next. Next one, please. These are typical things was shown by other previous speaker, and some of this technology that traveling can be encountered by a scalar wave and go as a defense against the systems like that. Next one, please. And next one. Next one. Again, these are all based on how you can set up a scenario to encounter these incoming measures as a countermeasures against them, and using a scalar potential by traveling 1 over r rather than r squared, as I explained it, 1 over r squared versus Hertzian wave and energy wave. Next one, please. Again, these are typical scenarios that shows longitudinal electromagnetic wave, interferometry, and techniques that you can put together in order to defend these incoming hypervelocity objects toward us. Next one, please. And next, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Remember this picture. This picture was taken in 1974 with a satellite reconnaissance called KH-11, which was a CIA satellite at that time. First time I saw this thing was 1974 when I was involved in SDI, and almost I'm there. Just 1 minute, please, to finish that. And compare this picture with the one Tesla had, and you can see a similarity between these, yet our industry claimed this is a ground-based laser, which is not the case at all, because ground-based laser has a lot of issues, such as thermal blooming, that cannot really perform and do what this picture shows. This is very similar to what Tesla was talking about, and is a scalar wave technology that they built it in 1974. There is a lot of evidence about that. We can talk about, but I'm running out of time, and I see the signal from our speaker. Thank you very much.